Greetings, friends, acolytes, Muns, and officials of the intergalactic banking clan, and welcome back to our archives. I have been expecting you. Today, we are truly going to take a turn as we are going to immerse ourselves fully in the historic and terrifying experiments of Darth Plagueis the Wise, one of the few people in all of history that Palpatine himself genuinely feared, and one of the most powerful Sith Lords of all of history, surpassing Darth Malgus, Darth Nox, and even the mightiest of the ancient Sith Lords such as Exar Kun, Frida Nad, and Naga Sadow. Darth Plagueis was exceptionally skilled. He delved so deep into the Force's secrets, he was able to learn how to manipulate midichlorians, the building blocks of the living force that allowed him to tap even into the cosmic force, an intergalactic and expansive energy field that almost no force sensitive ever had an attunement to match. Darth Plagueis was attributed to some terrifying and tyrannical experiments, the following of which I think we must note. So my friends, join us as we journey to the intergalactic banking clan and add a new addition to our archives and discover the true, most terrifying experiments of Darth Plagueis the Wise. The following monologue I am going to recount from The Secrets of the Sith novel, which states a numerous amount of novels including from Darth Plagueis, Source of Sin, Emperor Palpatine, and Darth Malgus. My experiments proved midichlorians could be controlled. If this is true, then they could not also be induced to create life at a monocellular level. Midichlorians in the cells of a mother could, in theory, be persuaded to craft a zygote. For consistency in my test subjects, I obtained hundreds of identical humanoids, each with a consistent midichlorian level. After much experimentation, I succeeded in prodding midichlorians to replicate themselves through asexual fission. Though in most cases, this process increased their numbers uncontrollably and killed the host. But I believe by using this method, I could trick the midichlorians into creating a zygote. Then it would simply be a matter of growing the subject under normal biological conditions. Such a subject could, of course, take years to hit the developmental milestones of a typical humanoid, but he could have a midichlorian count as high as 20,000 per cell. That is more than any Jedi or Sith in recorded history. Although entirely theoretical, such an achievement is intriguing. That is just one. If you think that is bad, you have absolutely nothing. You know nothing. You are about to see the true wrath of Darth Plagueis. While Darth Plagueis was considering the fact he could fertilize a female's eggs within their body without the use of sexual intercourse, meaning he was capable of technically creating life, recorded in his chapter, The Science of Creating Life in Star Wars, The Book of the Sith. That is nothing compared to the following two we are going to immerse ourselves in. This is a monologue from the Darth Plagueis novel. This Darth Plagueis novel is a lot of pages, roughly 900 pages on an e-reader, and 500 normally. This Darth Plagueis novel is personally my favourite novel in all of Star Wars history, and truly delves into Darth Plagueis' primary portion of his life, from murdering his own master in Tenebris, to his own death at the hands of his treachery of Sheev Palpatine. Let's immerse ourselves in the knowledge of the Darth Plagueis pages. Deeper in the complex, they move past cages containing as many creatures as could be found in a well-stocked zoo. 114D indicated a cluster separate from the rest. These are the Magister's most recent pregnancies. The Magister's? Sidious repeated in bewilderment. His success rate has improved. Sidious was still trying to make sense of the droid's statements when they entered a long corridor lined with windowless cells. Through the Force he could sense life forms behind each door. Captives? Oh no, sir, 114D said. Ongoing experiments. This technically means Plagueis was able to create pregnancies. He was able to fertilize a female's egg. And technically, even if it was only marginally at the start, he was able to create life itself and funnel midichlorians, siphoning of stronger force sensitivity into every single being that he can. However, this is by far not even close to the most brutal execution, torture, and method that Darth Plagueis the Wise used on his terrible experiments. The Bith, Venomous, dispatched by Tenebris to test me, to eliminate me had I failed, but Venomous had been a gift, essential in helping me unlock some of the deepest secrets of the Force. Every creature you have glimpsed or sensed here has been a similar blessing, as you will see when I lead you into the mysteries. What did the droid mean when it said the Majesty's pregnancies beneath the breath mask? Plagueis might have quirked a smile. It means that the pregnancies were not achieved by normal means of conception, but rather through the Force. This means Darth Plagueis was able to manipulate the midichlorians within a living being, very similar to how Darth Nihilus used Severforce, killing the midichlorians inside his own master Darth Traya in the Sith Triumvirate over 3 millennia before Plagueis' birth, meaning that Plagueis was able to conceive children through the Force, and manipulated the Force in such a way that he was able to create life within women without them even knowing until it was too late. He would be able to replicate this on other species, as shown in the further events of the Darth Plagueis novel. But there is one more brutal execution method and experiment we have to immerse ourselves in. Darth Venomous, the secret apprentice of Tenebrous, dispatched to kill Plagueis. The following monologues come from Darth Plagueis' novel. On the same day, they had allowed Venomous to die. Then, by manipulating the Bith's midichlorians, which should have been inert and unresponsive, Plagueis had resurrected him. The enormity of the event had stunned Sidious into silence and overwhelmed and addled 11-4D's processors. But Plagueis had carried on without assistance, again and again, following and allowing Venomous to die and be returned to life, until the Bith's organs had given out and Plagueis finally granted him everlasting death. Plagueis focused his attention on the vat in front of him where the remains of the Bith Sith Lord Darth Venomous floated in a semi-transparent bathe of preserving fluid. Venomous's corpse was still animated and twitching spasmodically, with the last dregs of life that Plagueis had invested in it, only to snatch it away again. He had been working for almost 20 uninterrupted hours on this particular project with limited success, and the notification from his droid signified a welcome diversion. "Let me explain what is happening to you," Plagueis said. "The cells that make up all living beings contain within them organelles, known as midichlorians. They are, in addition to being the basis for life, the elements that enable beings like me and you to perceive and use the Force. As a result of a lifetime of study, I have learned how to manipulate midichlorians, and I have instructed the limited number you possess to return to their source. In plain basic, Verona, I am killing you." Verona's face was losing color. His breathing had slowed. "Bring me back. I can still be of service to you." "But you are, Your Majesty." A celebrated ancient poet once said that every death lessened him, for he considered himself to be a brother to every living being. I, on the other hand, have come to understand that every death I oversee nourishes and empowers me, for I am a true Sith. No, better than Anazati. The Brain Eaters? What does better mean to those who have passed beyond notions of good and evil? Are you better than Bon Tapolo? Are you better than Queen Padme Amidala? I am only fit to answer the question. Better are those who do my bidding. Plagueis placed his hand atop Verona's. "I'll remain with you for a while as you meld with the Force, but at some point I'll have to leave you at the threshold to continue on your own. Don't do this, Damask. Please. I am Darth Plagueis, Verona, your shepherd." As the life left Verona's body, the path he and Plagueis followed wound deeper into the darkness and absence. Then Plagueis stopped, overcome by a sudden sense that he had already seen and travelled this path. Had he? He wondered as Verona breathed his last, or had the Force afforded him a glimpse of the future? All the ones you experimented on, killed, and brought back to life, they were little more than toys. This was the true brutal execution method of Darth Plagueis. He was able to kill his enemies by literally murdering the midichlorians. Then by manipulating these midichlorians further, he was able to resurrection until their organs physically gave out, and even then, as shown with the Bith Sith Lord Venomous, he was still able to find use for their mummified remains. But even this is not the end, as we delve into our final experiment, how Darth Plagueis was able to successfully reverse aging. The following 3 monologues all come from the Darth Plagueis novel that is set in 32 BBY, or at least the part that these all come from. Now, my friends, let us proceed. But having gained the power to keep another alive hadn't been enough for him, and so after Sidious had returned to Coruscant, he had ultimately devoted himself to internalizing that ability by manipulating the midichlorians that animated him. For several months he made no progress, but ultimately he began to perceive a measured change. The scars that had grown over his wounds had abruptly begun to soften and fade, and he began to breathe more freely than he had in 20 years. He began to see that he and sense that were not the only damaged tissues healing. but his entire body was rejuvenating itself. Beneath the transpirator, areas of flesh were smooth and useful, and he knew that eventually he would cease to age altogether. As the room was the opposite of the one he had often confined himself to on St. John, Plagueis no longer looked like the wide-eyed mystic that he had seen so many months earlier. Except for having to wear the breathing device, he struck Palpatine as a slightly older version of the Mun who had visited him on Naboo so many decades prior. Wary of approaching the corpse of his former master, he called upon the Force to roll the aged Mun over onto his back. From that ankle, Plagueis looked up almost as he had when Sidious first met him, decades earlier. Smooth, hairless cranium, humped nose, with its bridge flattened, as if from a shockball blow, with its sharp tip pressed almost to his upper lip, jutting lower jaw, sunken eyes, brimming with menace, a physical characteristic rarely encountered in a Mun. But then Plagueis had never been an ordinary Mun, or an ordinary being of any sort. Sidious took care, still reaching out with the Force. On closer inspection, he saw that Plagueis' already cyanotic flesh was smoothing out, his features relaxing. Faintly aware of the whir of air scrubbers and the sounds of the outside world infiltrating the luxurious suite, he continued the vigil. Then, in relief, he pulled himself up to his full height and let out a breath. This was no Sith trick, not an instance of feigning death, but one of succumbing to its cold embrace. The being who had guided him to power was gone. Wry amusement narrowed his eyes. The Mun might have lived for another 100 years unchanged. He might have lived forever if he had successfully fully in his quest. But in the end, though he could save others from death, he had failed to save himself. What an end to this character. Plagueis' entire life's work was dedicated to the Midichlorians, and in the end, Midichlorians were ultimately what got him killed. His studies, years, decades of studies into the depths of Midichlorians and the manipulation of essence life. Plagueis, until he died, with all the knowledge he had acquired, all the mastery over Midichlorians, to his own apprentice, deception. Plagueis could only be killed by someone he thought would never ever betray him. He thought he and Sidious were going to be the last preeminent Sith Lords, but after Sidious heard of the Chosen One, he knew Plagueis had to be disposed of. So, my friends, what did you think of this, Acolytes of the Force? I hope that you decide to enter our archives once again. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and manipulate the like button into turning black. Goodbye, my friends. I'll see you in a galaxy far, far away. And remember, kneel before the dragon of Zakul.